Hey, my Reddit story lovers. Welcome back to Bedtime Blocks. Tonight's story is one that's as gripping as it is emotional. A journey through love, secrets, and the moments that change everything. So get comfortable, let the day fade away, and sink into this one. I used to think my life was normal, stable, predictable in that warm, comforting way you don't notice until it's gone. I had a small apartment, a job I didn't hate, and a boyfriend named Adam who I thought loved me. We'd been together for almost 3 years. We had our routines: Friday night takeout, lazy Sundays on the couch, random midweek texts about nothing in particular. I knew his laugh, his moods, his little quirks like the back of my hand. At least, I thought I did. The first crack in the glass was small. I found a receipt in his jacket pocket one evening when I was doing laundry. A fancy restaurant across town, the kind of place you book weeks in advance, dated last Thursday. I didn't remember us going anywhere that night. In fact, I knew we hadn't. He'd told me he was working late and I'd eaten microwaved pasta while scrolling through Netflix. When I asked him about it, he barely flinched. Said it was for a work thing, some client dinner. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We trusted each other. At least, that's what I told myself as I stuffed the receipt back in his pocket. But something stayed lodged in the back of my mind like a splinter you can't quite dig out. And once you notice one odd thing, you start seeing more. He started coming home later. His phone was suddenly always face down on the table. He had new cologne. Subtle, but not the kind he'd ever worn before. I'd ask about his day, and he'd give short answers like he was reciting a script. One night, after he'd gone to bed, I opened his laptop to borrow it. The password had changed. He'd never locked me out of anything before. That was the moment I realized something was wrong. Very wrong. The night I decided to follow him, rain was needling the windshield, blurring the city into smeared streaks of red and white. Adam's taillights floated ahead of me, steady as a heartbeat. He'd said he had a late meeting again. I'd nodded, kissed his cheek, and waited 2 minutes before grabbing my keys. My chest felt tight the whole drive, like I was clutching a secret I hadn't agreed to hold. He didn't go to his office. He didn't even head toward downtown. He took the river road instead, the one lined with silent warehouses and discount furniture outlets. I followed at a distance and tried not to narrate the worst-case scenario in my head, but my brain is a catastrophizer by nature. A woman, a second apartment, a ring receipt that wasn't for me. He pulled into a small strip mall that looked closed. One light was on. Unit 12, a tutoring center I'd never noticed before. Bright future learning, the sign said in peeling vinyl letters. Not exactly a cheating lair. I parked 3 stores down, slipped my hoodie up, and watched him through the rain. He got out holding a paper bag and a stack of folders. Inside, past the glass, a girl about 9 sat at a little table, pencil tapping. She looked up when Adam walked in. She smiled. He smiled back in a way I hadn't seen in months, unguarded, kind. He unpacked the bag like a dad. Sandwiches, juice, a small chocolate bar he snapped in half and offered her like a secret. I waited an hour. He never touched her, never did anything weird. He just helped with fractions, laughed when she mixed up a digit, and wrote something on a whiteboard in that neat, slanted script I knew too well. When the girl's ride came, a tired-looking woman in scrubs, Adam handed over the folders and talked with her at the door in low voices. She squeezed his forearm before they left. My relief should have come then, but it didn't. Relief would have meant I understood him, that his explanations could fit in the old shape of us. Instead, I felt a stranger's weight settle in my ribs. This wasn't an affair. It was something else. Something hidden and intentional. And if I didn't know this part of his life, what else didn't I know? I watched him lock up, tuck the paper bag under his arm, and head back to his car. He didn't see me. On the drive home, he took a different route than usual. So did I. That night, he slid into bed smelling like that, not his cologne and detergent and the faintest trace of dry erase marker. I lay there counting his breaths, and every eighth inhale I sent my own tiny question into the dark. Why are you lying to me? I told myself I'd ask him the next day, that I'd sit at the kitchen table with my coffee and say, "Hey, are you moonlighting as a tutor?" Like a normal person, like someone who doesn't spiral. The words never found air. He walked in with his cheerful morning yes and a kiss on my forehead, and the question just died. So I texted Maya instead. She's my ride or die, the friend who once drove across town at midnight to bring me cough drops and a ridiculous blanket with flamingos on it. Something's off with Adam, I wrote. Found a receipt. Followed him. He was tutoring a kid? At least I think so. There was a pause, the kind where you can feel someone picking their words. That's not bad, she sent. Maybe he's volunteering. Then why lie? People hide good things for bad reasons all the time, she wrote. Guilt, pride, not wanting to explain the messy parts. I stared at the last message and felt irritation flare. Messy parts. The phrase made me think of junk drawers and tax seasons and mold under a shower seal, not entire hidden lives. That evening I rifled through the hall closet while he showered, telling myself I was looking for a light bulb. What I found was a shoebox with a bank's logo stamped on it, tucked behind a winter scarf. Inside, a prepaid phone, the cheap kind you buy at a gas station, a ring-bound pack of index cards, and a small brass key with a sticker on it that read ST94. I shouldn't have turned on the phone, but you don't put a lock on an unlit house and expect no one to try the door. It opened without a password. The messages were sparse and clinical. Yeah. Thursday, 6th. A. Yes, material's ready. E. No delays. You know why? A. Understood. A contact labeled R had sent payment screenshots with notes like transfer received and ledger updated. No names, no emojis, nothing to soften the edges. Under the phone, the index cards were written in that same neat hand I'd watched through the tutoring center window. Each card had a heading and bullet points below it like a study guide, but the headings were me. Favorite comfort foods. Phrases that calm her. Stories she repeats when anxious. Things she'll forgive immediately, things she won't. My breath snagged. I flipped card after card. There were dates in the corners, little versions of a calendar scribbled in pencil. The earliest one was 2 weeks before our first date. When the shower shut off, I had the box back in its place and my guilt tucked between my ribs like contraband. I smiled at him and handed him a towel, and his eyes, those careful, assessing eyes, flicked over me like he was measuring a seam. I couldn't unknow the cards. Once you see your own personality outlined like a DIY manual, you start hearing your life in echo. I noticed how he waited exactly 8 seconds before speaking when I was mad. How he used my phrases back at me. I hear that. That must be heavy. Like an algorithm learning my speech and returning it to gain trust. How he put on the song I always cried to the night my grandfather died without me saying a word. I had thought it was intuition. Now it felt like choreography. After work on Tuesday, I told Maya everything. We sat in her car with the windows fogged, the city fogging too, like the world, and our breath had decided to match. That's messed up, she said finally, pupils big. Like, not just a white lie messed up, that's studied. Why study me? I asked. For what? Control, she said, and the word sounded clinical. Or maybe safety. If he can predict you, he can keep you. It's a thing. I followed him again, I admitted. Not to the tutoring center this time. He went to a storage facility by the highway. We drove there. Dumb, maybe, but fear and curiosity make a fast partnership. The place was one of those long corridors of corrugated metal doors, fluorescent lighting humming like an old song. The key from the box fit Unit 94 as if it had been waiting for us. Inside were shelves, plastic bins, a card table, and a corkboard. On the table sat a label maker, a stack of envelopes bound in a rubber band, and a metronome. A metronome. That tiny triangle of tick-tock I remembered from piano lessons, clicking time into obedience. I opened a bin labeled Archive, Year 1. The top layer was receipts. Coffee shops we'd gone to that winter, the sweater he'd bought me on my birthday, the first plant we killed together. Underneath, clear sleeves held printouts of our texts with highlights and margin notes. Responds better to humor when anxious. Avoid calm down. Triggers dad association. On the corkboard, a map of the city with threads and pins. Our apartment circled. My office. The grocery store where I became my grocery store, if you know what I mean. Small post-its fluttered in the HVAC draft. Wednesday, ask about childhood drawing. Fry, surprise tie. Son, discuss boundaries around sharing passwords. I heard my own heartbeat then, loud over the metronome I'd started without realizing. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The space felt smaller, like the air that belonged to me had been filtered through someone else's rules and returned as a prescription. Maya's voice came from somewhere to my left. We have to confront him, she whispered, like the bins might wake up and shush her. I don't know how, I said. It's like everything I'd used to confront him, my reactions, my questions, he's already mapped. We stood in the strange inventory of my life until the metronome's steady click became unbearable. I clicked it off. The silence snapped like a string. I didn't sleep. I lay flat and watched the ceiling fan carve the night into slices. When Adam's alarm finally chimed, I had already planned 24 opening lines and discarded each one as if I were auditioning for a role I no longer wanted. He padded to the kitchen. I followed with my palms damp and my teeth dry. I found your storage unit, I said to the back of his shirt. No welcome, no warm-up. The words dropped between us like a plate I'd stopped trying to catch. He turned. For a flicker, his face went empty. The kind of empty you see when the power cuts and all the appliances hush at once. Then the performance lights came back on. Okay, he said. Then we should talk. We sat. He folded his hands, a small prayer without a god. I wanted to tell you, he started, and my laugh escaped in one cruel syllable because that string is so overused it may as well be a lullaby. Don't, I said. Not that line. He nodded, took a breath, and tried again. I learned a long time ago that the fastest way to lose someone is to be disorganized about the truth. Try honest, I said. The word is honest. His jaw worked, a swallow fighting gravity. The unit is part record-keeping, part habit, part insurance. I used to lose people by accident. I would forget what mattered to them. I would forget a sentence that changed the way they breathed. I'd forget the date they said, I can't handle surprises on Tuesdays. And then one day, I would do something thoughtless and it would be over. He met my eyes. So I started writing it down, not to manipulate, to remember, to care right. I thought of the metronome, the map, the index cards titled with my name like a file in a cabinet. You're caring like a scientist, I said. Like I'm an experiment with variables. I'm caring like an anxious person, he said softly, and maybe like a coward. I almost softened, which made me angry. Softness is how you get folded back into a shape that doesn't fit. Who is E? I asked, sliding the burner phone onto the table. And why do my feelings come with ledgers? He closed his eyes. My sister, he said. Eliza. And the ledger isn't about you, it's debts. Medical. I've been paying them off. The tutoring. The extra job. The rest. Why lie? Because I thought the truth would make me look like a mess you'd have to clean up. He exhaled, an old tire losing air. And because I didn't want you to see how I keep track. People don't like feeling Observed. Because being observed isn't being loved, I said. The sentence landed in my mouth, tasting like metal. He reached for my hand. I let him get halfway there and then didn't. That half inch of space felt like a milepost. I need time, I said. I need to see the parts of you that aren't annotations of me. Everything I've felt is real, he said, voice roughened. I swear it. Nothing about how I feel is a lie. But the title had already written itself in my head. It was all a lie. Even if that wasn't entirely true, the part of me that had to protect the rest of me decided it in that moment. I packed a bag and left for Maya's spare room. The air in there smelled like old perfume and fresh laundry and something else I couldn't name. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was grief. Breakups don't sound like they do in movies. They're not violins and door slams and a clean black cut. They sound like a phone buzzing on a dresser you're not reaching for. Like someone using a quieter laugh on a joke that used to land. Like a toothbrush drying on the wrong side of a sink. At Maya's, I made tea and watched it get cold because my hands wanted a ritual to hold more than my throat wanted warmth. She left me alone and also didn't, drifting in and out like a lighthouse beam. Present, then giving me dark to cry in. By midnight, I had scrolled back years through Adam's texts, looking for evidence that would let me rewrite history as either pure malice or spotless devotion. But the problem with real people is they're messy. I could find kindness and construction, tenderness and tactics. I kept thinking about the little girl at the tutoring center. I pictured her tapping her pencil and getting the kind of patient attention kids remember later when they tell someone, "There was one adult who didn't make me feel stupid." I also kept thinking about my name stamped on index cards. Both were true at once, and my brain hated the contradiction. The next afternoon, a number I didn't recognize called. "Hi," the voice said, careful, like walking on a floor you're not sure will hold. "Is this her?" "Who is this?" "Eliza," she said. "Adam's sister. He said you had questions, and he thought you might not answer, if he called." "What do you want?" I asked, surprising myself with how flat it came out. "To show you something," she said. "About why the ledger exists. About why the lies exist, too. I'm not calling to fix him. I'm calling because I don't know how to do this part alone." Maya raised an eyebrow from across the room. I put the call on speaker. "My mom," Eliza said. "She's in a memory care facility. She got worse fast last year. We were drowning. Adam took 3 jobs. He wouldn't let me sell the house because he said one day she might want to go home. He keeps accounts like a dragon keeps gold because chaos scares him." She exhaled. "And because our dad was a professional liar who told us the truth was a luxury. We learned habits." My body softened without my permission. History is a terrible absolver and an effective explainer. "Why not tell me?" "Because if you left, he wanted it to be for the person he really is," she said. "Not for the worst story about him. He didn't want to use our mom as a reason to keep you." I closed my eyes. The fan at Maya's did its endless churn. "I'll meet you," I said. "Tomorrow, noon." I hung up and stared at the carpet until the beige made patterns. "You're allowed to keep walking," Maya said gently. "Meeting her doesn't require you to come back." "I know," I said, and did and didn't. The facility smelled like lemon cleaner and something sweet I couldn't identify. In the common room, a woman hummed to a television show that didn't ask anything of her. Eliza was smaller than I expected and larger in all the ways that matter. All forearms and warm eyes and a fatigue you can't fake. She led me to a courtyard where winter plants pretended to be brave. "He pays half," she said, sitting. "I pay the other half by working double shifts. Sometimes he tutors. Sometimes he builds websites for small businesses at night. He thinks he's hiding the exhaustion. He's not." "I saw the storage unit," I said. "It's organized love." She winced. "He started it with our dad. The notebook." How to handle him without setting him off. schedules, phrases that worked better than others. Children of unpredictable people become archivists. Then he dated women who liked that he remembered everything. He mistook gratitude for connection. And me? I asked. You were different, she said. He changed the labels from avoid crisis to make her feel safe. It's not a defense, it's a map of the wrong problem. We sat in the cold and watched a nurse help an old man pick a leaf from his sleeve with reverence like it was a medal. He loves you, Eliza said finally. But love plus fear of loss can look a lot like control if you squint. I'm not squinting, I said. I'm looking straight at it and it still looks like that. She nodded, and a tiny relieved sound escaped her throat, as if she'd been waiting for me to either minimize it or set it on fire. He's in group, she said softly. He started 3 months ago. He told me he didn't want to love people through a spreadsheet anymore. He just didn't know how to stop without losing the person in front of him. I felt something inside me shift, not toward forgiveness yet, but toward a room where forgiveness might someday sit. Thank you, I said, for telling me the version that contains both harm and history. Before I left, she pressed a folded paper into my palm. He asked me to give you this if you ever asked about the ledger. I didn't because I didn't want to be the messenger. But here we are. In the car, I opened it. It was an apology letter written in a voice I recognized more than I wanted to. In between the paragraphs were instructions to himself. Do not justify. Do not explain. State the harm. Own it. Offer repair without demand. Accept no as an answer. I felt the strangest laugh snag in my chest. Even his apology had a checklist. And still, the part of me that remembers the first time he made me tea exactly the way I loved it, put my forehead on the steering wheel and cried until the horn threatened to tell on me. I didn't run back to him. I did the things you do when your life changes shape. Bought new pillowcases because the old ones had remembered his face. Rearranged the mugs so my favorite one didn't feel like it was waiting for anyone else's hand. Started taking longer walks that had no destination except away. At night I wrote. Not to post, though the bones of a post were there, but to put language around the fog. I made lists of the small good things that were still true. The barista with star tattoos who always says, coming right up, like it's a spell. The way my neighbor's dog greets every morning like it's an unwrapped present. The fact that plants forgive even more than people do if you give them light and stop drowning them. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Lila, Adam's ex. We'd met once at a party, the kind where everyone is pretending they're not comparing lives. I asked for coffee. She agreed with a curiosity that had a little edge to it, as if she'd been waiting for this call. He kept a notebook, she said as soon as we sat. Not a storage unit when we were together. We weren't that advanced. Her smile was a bruise. He remembered everything and then used it to make us both feel safe, until it made me feel like I was being babysat. Did you ever feel cherished? I asked, not sure why I needed to hear it. Yes, she said, in a way that felt like standing in the exact center of a spotlight. But you can't live in a spotlight. It's hot. You can't see the audience. And if the light moves, you go blind. She stirred her tea. He's not a villain. He's a boy who learned the wrong magic and kept using it because it worked. On the walk home, I thought about magic. How so many spells are just misdirection. How sometimes you put something in one hand and make sure the audience stares at the other. I had been staring at the hand that remembered my favorite ways to be held. The other hand was busy measuring me. That night, Adam texted for the first time since I left. No pressure. Can I bring you food? Or silence? Or nothing at all? Then, almost an hour later, as if he had to wrestle it out of himself, I'm sorry, not the checklist version, the real kind. I stared at the screen until the words doubled. Then I put the phone face down and sat with the choice. Not forever. Just for one evening, I'd let it be a question I didn't have to answer yet. I met with a therapist, a woman who listened like listening was a profession you trained your entire body for. I told her about the unit, the metronome, the cards. I told her about my dad, because of course there's always a childhood echo, and how he'd been unpredictable with affection, turning warmth on and off like a faucet you learn not to trust. Children of unpredictable people often confuse regulation with love, she said. Adam tried to regulate everything so no one would leave. It's not love, but it's what he knows to do when he's scared. I thought I was safe because he remembered me, I whispered. That was the trick, wasn't it? I mistook recall for care. Recall can be care, she said, and it can be control. Two truths are hard to hold when you're hurting. Then what do I do with the title in my head? I asked. It was all a lie. She tilted her head. Sometimes we write hard titles because the simple truth doesn't protect us enough. Maybe the gentler sentences, parts were a lie, parts were love. I get to choose what I live with. I went home and made soup that tasted like the kind your grandmother swore would cure everything. It didn't, but it warmed the place in me that wasn't ready to be cold forever. Later, I picked up my phone and typed, "Bring silence, and tea from the place you know. Leave the ledgers at home." Then I hit send and felt both relief and panic run a lap around my ribs. When he knocked, Maya stationed herself in the bedroom with headphones and a murder podcast, ready to be a witness if I needed one, and an absence if I didn't. I opened the door to Adam holding a paper bag like an offering. He looked tired in the way people look when they've been carrying something heavy they can't put down. "I'm not here to fix," he said, hands visible like you do with skittish animals. "I'm here to listen." "Then sit," I said, and surprised us both by how steady my voice sounded. He told me things I didn't know. Not all at once, not as a justification monologue, but like stones carefully placed across a stream so we could step without falling in. He talked about their dad and the books with tabs and how he learned early that if he could anticipate the next outburst, he could sometimes soften it. He talked about turning that survival into a skill and then into a template and then into a trap. I started group because Eliza said she was tired of being the only mirror that told me the truth, he said. She said, "You use care like armor, Adam. Take it off or stop calling it love." He looked at me. "I didn't want to try this with you. I wanted to arrive already healed so you'd never see the messy draft." "I've already seen it," I said. "The messy draft is all over a storage unit off Highway 7. His mouth tugged, a sad, almost smile. "I shut it down," he said. "Gave Eliza the key. Told her if I ask for it back, she should make me earn it with 5 pages of journal, not cards." He swallowed. "I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking if I can keep telling you the truth without a goal." He handed me a small notebook, not one of his old ones. Blank pages, soft cover, the kind that invites a pen instead of intimidating it. Inside the front cover he'd written, in his neat hand, but without bullet points, "I want to love people I don't control. I want to be loved when I'm not performing competence. I want to forgive myself for learning love from fear." We sat quiet long enough for the tea to go from perfect to fine. When he finally left, he didn't try to hug me. He didn't even reach. He just said goodnight with the softness you reserve for rooms someone else is sleeping in. After he closed the door, Maya popped out like a meerkat. "Need snacks?" she asked. I laughed, and then I cried, and then I did both at once until my face felt like it had done cardio. "It wasn't all a lie," I said into her hoodie. "I hate that it wasn't. It would be easier if it were." "Easy is a kind of lie, too," she murmured. "You don't owe anyone a tidy ending." Weeks learned how to be weeks again. I went to work and didn't tell anyone because this story doesn't fit in office kitchens. I kept therapy. I texted Eliza sometimes. Memes mostly, the universal bandage. I bought a plant that is famously hard to kill and named it hope, but reasonable. Adam and I met twice more in public places with chairs you can leave easily. Once at the park where a kid lost a balloon and then learned, very fast, that grief is part of loving anything that can float. Once at the library where we spoke softly because other people's quiet is contagious. We didn't rehash. We didn't draft contracts. We told each other small truths like practice. I panic when a text goes unanswered too long. I need morning to be mine. I love you. I'm afraid of loving you. That last pair we said inside our chests privately, but the room knew. One evening, my phone buzzed with a notification from a support group forum I joined. A long, raw post about a partner who cataloged every detail as if intimacy were a shelf to be dusted, not a forest to get lost in together. In the comments, someone wrote, people can't help what broke them, but they are responsible for what they break. I screenshotted it and sat with it like a koan. That night, I dreamed of the metronome. In the dream, it clicked faster and faster until it snapped, and all that was left was birdsong. I woke up with my heart racing and realized I wasn't counting breaths anymore. Mine or his, I was just breathing. When Adam asked if he could return my spare key, I said yes and no in the same sentence. Yes, you can physically hand it to me, I texted. No, you can't keep a copy. Boundaries are ugly little words sometimes, but I'm learning they can be beautifully shaped fences with gates you control. He delivered the key in an envelope with nothing else in it. The restraint felt like a gift I hadn't asked for and needed anyway. There isn't a single ending to tell you. There's an honest one. We tried again, but not the way movies teach you. We didn't slide back into the old groove, we carved new ones, shallow at first so we could step out of them if we noticed they were just the old ones with fresh paint. We set rules that were less about lists and more about spirit. No secret ledgers, no using care as currency, no apology templates. Ask before you help. Say the scary thing early. He kept group, I kept therapy. We both kept Maya and Eliza like anchors. One evening, months later, we were cooking, and I burned the onions and wanted viscerally to cry about it, the way you do when it isn't about onions. Instead of naming my emotion for me, instead of flipping to an index card titled, How to Handle This, Adam turned off the stove and asked, Do you want advice, a hug, a joke, or space? Space, I said, and he nodded and left the room, and washed his hands and hummed badly to fill his own silence with something that wasn't control. When I came back 10 minutes later, the smoke had cleared. So had something else. I looked at him and at the life we were trying to build, without puppeteering, and thought, maybe it wasn't all a lie. Maybe the lie was that love has to be perfect to be safe. But here's the thing I promised myself when I started writing this. Even if this ends tomorrow, even if we discover we are better as lesson than as life, I am not sorry I chose to try with my eyes open. The metronome is gone. The birds are louder, and when I put my hand in his now, I can feel both our pulses, messy, unsynced, and trust that if the tempo changes, it's because we're alive. If you came here for a clean confession, I can give you only this one. I wanted to say it was all a lie because that sentence is a shield. The truer sentence is softer and scarier. Parts were a lie. Parts were love. I'm learning to live with both. And tonight, that's enough. The reality about rebuilding trust is that it never arrives with a trumpet. It arrives on tiptoe, a dozen small moments no one would film. I kept waiting for the big cinematic breakthrough. The speech that would dissolve doubt like sugar in hot tea. It never came. Instead, the work showed up as tiny choices. The pause before assuming, the question asked instead of answered for me, the way he let my silence be silence, not a puzzle to solve. At the grocery store, he reached for my usual tea, then stopped and looked at me. Still your favorite? It was nothing, and it was huge. Another night, he texted a reminder about an appointment I'd mumbled while half asleep. Old me would have thanked him. The part learning to breathe without a ledger sent, Let me bring those up first. He replied, Thanks for telling me. Not perfect, but present. We had slips, of course. I felt myself scanning for motives, bracing for choreography I couldn't see. He felt himself wanting to orchestrate calm, to hurry us toward an answer with a plan. We practiced naming it. I'm counting right now, I'd admit. I want to manage this, he'd say. Then we waited. And somehow the waiting, letting the feeling crest and pass, built more trust than any promise. On Sundays, we walked the loop by the river, counting dogs and boats while grief unclenched. When I grew quiet, he didn't interrogate it. He offered options. Advice, a hug, a joke, or space. I chose space often. He took no offense. When I circled back, there was no quiz, only room for it. Maya watched with the suspicion of a best friend. She wouldn't let me outsource my judgment, but she stood nearby with a flashlight when I needed to check corners. You're allowed to keep your bags packed, she said. Trying is not obligating. I kept that sentence like a charm. Little by little, the metronome in my chest relaxed. I stopped measuring his smiles for intention and mine for performance. Unremarkable minutes began to feel remarkable again. Spring arrived early, warm days nudging people into parks before the trees remembered how to bloom. We walked the river path, shoes scuffing grit, talk easy. I kept thinking I should feel finished by now, done with doubt, done with scanning. But healing, it turns out, moves at walking speed. You're thinking about the ledger, he said, like noting cloud cover. I'm thinking about how hard it is to unsee, I answered. Even when I believe you, my brain keeps checking the locks. He nodded. Me too. The urge to plan is still a twitch. Not planning is only the beginning. I have to replace it with listening. He paused. Listening means letting silence be useful. We sat and watched brown water carry sticks like tiny boats. A couple debated whether the duck was a mallard. A kid in a red coat announced he could hop to the trash can, then did. The world made its ordinary noise, and I wasn't counting his breaths or mine. I was just there, unmeasured. On the walk back, he didn't take my hand first. He waited. I took his not because it proved anything, but because it didn't have to. For the first time in months, the future felt like a path, not a test. The river moved without a metronome, so did we. That night, I wrote 3 sentences and stuck it on the fridge. Ask before helping. Say the hard thing early. No secret systems. Not a spell, just a guardrail. He read it, nodded, and didn't photograph it. That mattered. Later in bed, I told him a story about my dad forgetting a recital, and how I kept playing alone, convinced effort could summon audience. He didn't interrupt or add it to a card. He only said, I'm here now, and meant the now more than the I. Something in my throat loosened after years of vigil. Change is ordinary. It's choosing the small, true thing. On the fridge, the sticky note curled. We let it curl. The next test didn't announce itself. It chimed like loose change. I found a silver key in his jacket, unmarked and unfamiliar. My stomach fell hard, a reflex older than reason. I could have marched into the living room and demanded a story. Instead, I spent one day carrying the key in my pocket like a hot coin, wanting to know if trust existed when it wasn't effortless. When I asked, his shoulders dropped the way people's do when a truth finally gets to land. Community garden, he said. I help Eliza there for Mom. He offered to show me before I decided whether to believe him. No speech, no preemptive defense, just come see. We went. Sun on the wire fence. Beds of soil labeled with popsicle sticks, some neat, some scrawled as if written mid-laugh. Eliza waved with dirt to her elbows. A wind chime of mismatched spoons jittered. The key fit a low shed with seeds, hand trowels, and a cracked radio playing old ballads. I hadn't realized how long I'd held my breath until I watched it leave. Not every key opened a door I dreaded. Not everything required decoding. Some doors led to tomatoes. Some to ordinary afternoons with people who were trying, in the dirt, to keep something alive. We watered rows that weren't ours. A note read, "Please help the beans if it's hot." He hummed badly to a song the radio called a classic, and I saw the moment he stopped narrating it. We started something new, a weekly temperature check. No fixing, no defending, just naming where we were at. Green meant steady, yellow meant strained, red meant something needed urgent light. We'd set the timer for 15 minutes and each talk without the other interrupting. It felt awkward at first, like practicing a language neither of us spoke fluently, but the rhythm came. One Tuesday, I said I was hovering in yellow because his sudden bursts of helpfulness still made me tense. He admitted he was also yellow, scared he wouldn't notice if I was unhappy until it was too late. "That's not a flaw," I said. "That's awareness." He nodded. But awareness used to make me build systems. Now it just makes me want to ask more. We left it there, neither of us scrambling to solve the yellow. Sometimes it shifted to green on its own by Thursday. Sometimes it stayed until the next check-in. Both were okay. The first red came over something silly. Dishes. I'd left mugs in the sink. He'd washed them without asking, and I felt managed. We talked about it that night, voices low. "I thought I was helping," he said. "I thought I was setting a boundary," I said back. We ended up washing the last plate together, water running warm over both our hands. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't tense. It was just ordinary. And maybe ordinary was the point. The more we practiced, the less afraid we were of yellow, the less panicked by red. We learned to see them not as verdicts, but as weather. Changing, inevitable, and not a reason to evacuate at the first cloud. One night after a green week, he said, "I used to think love was about removing all the yellow days. Now I think it's about walking through them without packing to leave." It wasn't poetry, but it landed in me like something solid, something that could bear weight. Maya never stopped being my safety net. She didn't hover, but she stayed visible like a friend keeping an eye on the lifeguard stand. "You can swim alone," she told me, "but you're allowed to know who's watching the waves." She met Adam again over dinner at my place. I'd braced for stiffness, for subtle barbs dressed as jokes. Instead, she ate garlic bread, argued with him over whether pineapple belonged on pizza, and laughed in a way that didn't sound like an act. After she left, she texted, "He's trying, I see it." 3 words that warmed me more than I expected. She'd been my harshest mirror. If she saw something worth seeing, maybe it was there. We kept the evening simple. No talk of ledgers or storage units, just the 3 of us in the small glow of candles and cheap wine. At one point, I caught him watching me and Maya laughing, and his smile wasn't about himself, it was about us. Later, I told him, "She's part of my green." "I want her to be," he said. And I believed him, not because of how he said it, but because of what he didn't add. No qualifiers, no "if she approves." Just acceptance that Maya's role in my life wasn't up for editing. It was a small but important victory. He could want me without wanting to manage me. That night, I fell asleep thinking about how trust doesn't return with a roar. It trickles back in, drip by patient drip. We tested ourselves on a weekend away, but no schedules, no itinerary, just a bag each and a tank of gas. Old Adam would have bristled at the idea. New Adam just asked, "North or south?" and didn't argue when I said, "Surprise me." We ended up in a lakeside town neither of us had visited. There was a farmer's market where we tried cheeses from strangers, a diner with pie that tasted like it belonged to someone's grandmother, and a hiking trail we abandoned halfway through because the lake looked better. Lying on the grass, we watched the sky turn orange. I waited for him to pull out a fact about sunsets or ask if this was the kind of evening I liked best. He didn't. He just let it be. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think I had to curate happiness like it was a gallery. But it's better when it just happens. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We both knew the truth in it. When we drove home, the car was quiet in the way that feels like company, not absence. No one was taking notes. No one was recording the moment for later use. And when I looked out the window, I realized I wasn't bracing for the other shoe to drop. Maybe this was what green felt like when it lasted more than a week. Of course, real life isn't a string of lakeside sunsets. There were weeks work ground us down, days when we snapped over nothing. And yes, there were moments I still caught myself wondering if a kindness was spontaneous or strategic. The difference now was that we named it in the moment. This feels cataloged, I'd say. He'd nod instead of denying it. That's a fair read, he'd admit. Sometimes he explained, sometimes he didn't. Both were okay. One Thursday night we fought over laundry. My habit of leaving clothes in the dryer, his habit of helping by folding them. It spiraled until I said, I need you to know I'm scared right now. Not of you hurting me, of us sliding backward. He took a long breath. Then let's not, he said simply. And somehow that was enough to diffuse it. We left the laundry half folded and watched a show instead, letting the argument cool without pretending it had never happened. The more we did this, the more I believed that red moments didn't erase green weeks. They were just part of the weather. It's been months since I first stood in that storage unit, staring at the shelves that felt like an archive of me. I think about it less now, not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer owns the present. I've stopped calling it "It Was All a Lie." The new title in my head is "It Was Complicated." Less sharp, less defensive, more accurate. We still have yellow days, we still get red now and then, but we keep showing up. No ledgers, no secret indexes, no metronome ticking between us. Just conversations, laughter, the occasional argument, and the quiet choice to keep trying. Love, I'm learning, isn't about perfect recall. It's about living in a way that doesn't require records to feel secure. If you came here for a tidy moral, I can't give you one. But I can tell you this. The green days are worth it. The yellow days teach us. And the red days? They remind us we're still alive, still choosing, still writing the pages ourselves. Messy, beautiful, and ours. The green days were starting to outnumber the yellow, but I didn't want to forget how much work they took to grow. So I started keeping a notebook. Not about Adam, not even about us, but about me. Pages filled with the little things that made me happy. The smell of fresh bread in the morning. The quiet comfort of rain on my window. The way sunlight hit my kitchen counter at 4:15 p.m. I wrote down moments that felt like me, unfiltered, unmeasured. It wasn't a ledger. It was a garden I was planting for my own sake. One morning, Adam glanced at it while pouring his coffee. Curious? I asked, expecting the old itch in him to know every page. He smiled, but didn't move closer. Yeah, curious, he said, but it's yours. If you want me to see it, you'll show me. Then he turned away and sipped his coffee. That choice, to leave the pages closed, spoke louder than any grand declaration. It told me he could live without owning every part of me. It told me I could have pieces of myself that belonged only to me. Later, I wrote that in the notebook. Today, he let the door stay closed. I liked that. Maya teased me when I told her about it, calling it my self-love diary. But her voice softened. Maybe I should start one, she said. It'd be nice to write about myself without thinking about who's going to read it. I smiled. It's better when you know no one's watching. In a strange way, that little book made me want to share more with Adam. Not because I owed him those pages, but because I knew I didn't. And that made the choice feel real. Summer settled in heavy, nights sticky and slow. We'd escape to the roof sometimes, a couple of folding chairs between us and the skyline. One night, as we listened to the hum of the city, He asked something we hadn't touched in weeks. Do you ever miss before? His voice was quiet, but the question wasn't small. I knew what he meant. Before the ledger, before the storage unit, before I saw how deeply he'd mapped me. I thought about it before answering. I miss thinking I knew you completely, I said. I miss not wondering if you're managing me, but I don't miss the truth of it. He nodded slowly. I miss not worrying if you'll believe me. We laughed a little, but the kind of laugh that's heavy because it comes from a place you can't joke away. The air between us felt both lighter for having said it and heavier for knowing it was true. As we packed up the chairs to head back inside, I realized something. Missing pieces of the past didn't mean I wanted the whole thing back. It was like missing the smell of a bakery you used to work in. You could still remember the warmth without needing to step back into the heat. That night, when I lay in bed, I understood that nostalgia is tricky. It can make you forget the cost of the comfort you miss. And I wasn't willing to pay that price again. In August, we hit a red. It began small, a dinner with friends I'd canceled last minute because I was exhausted. He offered to reschedule on my behalf. I bristled at the suggestion, told him I could handle it. He backed off, but something in the air had already shifted. That night, the tension lingered. It wasn't loud, but it was there, a hum beneath the floorboards. We decided to walk it out. The air was still thick from the day's heat. I was just trying to help, he said. I know, I replied, but I need to keep the choice mine. We didn't land on perfect middle ground. We didn't tie it up neatly, but we left the conversation with the bridge still standing, which was more important than being right. Later, lying in bed, I realized something. In the past, we would have fought harder, each of us trying to win. Now, we fought for the connection, for the ability to keep coming back to the same table. That felt like a bigger victory than the argument itself. The next day, I sent him a text. Thanks for not turning last night into a scoreboard. He replied, thanks for walking with me instead of away from me. Eliza invited us to the community garden's harvest day. I wasn't sure what to expect. Probably small talk, maybe polite smiles. Instead, it was one of those afternoons that just worked. Children ran between rows, carrying carrots like trophies. Adults passed around baskets of tomatoes and herbs. Adam spent half an hour teaching a teenager how to fix a broken hose. I watched him from under the shade of a tree, laughing in the middle of something messy and real. There was no performance in it. It wasn't the curated charm I'd seen before. It was just him. When it was time to leave, he handed me a small paper bag. Inside were a handful of ripe tomatoes. No notes, he said with a little smile. Just tomatoes. And it really was just that. No secret meaning, no carefully placed gesture to hit an emotional target. Just something he thought I'd like. I realized then that part of trust coming back is learning to take things at face value again. Not every kindness is a strategy. Sometimes it's just a tomato. In September, I took a solo trip. A week by the coast, just me in a rented cabin. Old Adam would have needed a full itinerary, my exact check-in and check-out times, maybe even a copy of the rental agreement. New Adam only asked, text me when you get there safe. I spent my mornings walking the shoreline, collecting smooth stones and watching gulls dive. Afternoons were for reading in the hammock or napping with the windows open to the salt air. At night, I watched the tide under a blanket. The sound like breathing I didn't have to control. I didn't miss him in that restless, anxious way. I missed him like you miss a favorite song while listening to another you're enjoying just as much. I knew I'd be glad to hear it again, but I wasn't incomplete without it. When I came home, he didn't ask for a full play-by-play. He just asked, what was your favorite part? I told him about the quiet mornings, and he nodded like that was enough. And it was. We started a ritual in October. Every Sunday night, we would each share one thing we'd learned about ourselves that week. Not about us, not about progress or setbacks, just self-truths. It felt clumsy at first, like building a fire with damp wood, but sparks formed anyway. He said, I learned I like eating late, but I pretended not to because my dad hated it. I said, I learned plants survive longer when I don't name them like pets. We laughed, easy, and the room loosened its shoulders. On our third Sunday, rain stitched the windows and the power blinked once. He spoke first. I learned I'm still tempted to overperform when I'm scared. I want you to see me as reliable, so I start stacking proofs. He exhaled. I'm trying to trust that showing up is enough. I held that sentence like a warm mug. Then I went. I learned I rushed to fill silence because I grew up thinking quiet meant trouble. I can let quiet be rest. We sat with those new notes, not as ammunition, but as weather reports. No one had to solve anything. The ritual didn't make us invincible, it made us honest. Some weeks the truth was tender, like, I realized I'm kinder after long walks. Some weeks it was less poetic. I need more sleep than I admit. But stacking small honesties started to feel like stacking kindling. Later, when fire was needed, there would be something dry to catch. Before bed, he asked, Want a story, a joke, or nothing? I chose nothing, and we respected it like prayer. From the street, a bus sighed. Somewhere, a neighbor sneezed. The apartment hummed. The fridge, the heater, the soft thud of our own hearts remembering they were not alarms. I fell asleep without measuring the room. That felt like a skill worth keeping. In the morning, I wrote our ritual on a sticky note. Sunday truths, 15 minutes each, no fixing, and pressed it beside the kettle. He didn't photograph it or turn it into steps. He just kissed my temple and said, See you at weather check, and left me smiling. The holidays arrived with their usual tests. Logistics, grief that travels in from past years, the pressure to be merry on a timetable. We brought a tiny tree and cookies to his mom's facility. She was soft-eyed that day, somewhere between recognition and dream. Adam adjusted the blanket on her lap, with a gentleness that came from deeper than habit. Hi, Mom, he said. She smiled at the lights, not at us, and I felt gratitude anyway. In the hallway afterward, he leaned against the soda machine and let out a long, careful breath. Thank you for being kind in there, he said, for not narrating it. I shrugged, unsure how to hold praise for basic decency. We're visiting a person, I said, not a storyline. We dropped by Eliza's to leave leftovers. She hugged me like family who remember boundaries. On her fridge, a magnet held a photo of the garden under snow, the beds tidy and sleeping. We'll start seeds in February, she said. Hope stated as planned. Adam promised to build a new trellis. No one wrote it down. The promise lived in air and was somehow safer there. That night, my dad texted a looping holiday joke he forwards every year. For once, I didn't feel the old tightness. I turned my phone face down and let our living room be small and holy. Mismatched candles, a lopsided paper star we'd taped above the window, 2 mugs of cider cooling slow. Want a carol? Adam asked, already grinning at my answer. Only if you sing badly on purpose, I said. He did, and the room chose delight. Later, as we washed dishes, he asked, Does this feel like a life? I looked at our damp sleeves, the soap bubbles clinging to his wrist hair, the way ordinary work can be a vow when shared. Yeah, I said. It does. Before bed, I wrote, Love is lighter when I stop auditioning for it. I tucked the book away, turned off the tree, and let the dark be kind. Outside, a plow scraped the street. Inside, we climbed under blankets that smelled of oranges, laundry, and a small courage. Night. January arrived with a hard blue sky and sidewalks that glittered like someone had thrown down crushed glass. We learned the choreography of cold, double socks, wool hats, tea that fogged our glasses. One evening, steam curling from the mugs, I asked, Do you think we'll ever stop talking about the past? I didn't mean erase it. I meant stop circling it like a landmark we were afraid to pass. He thought for a while, gaze on the window where our breath faded. I don't think we should stop, he said. But I think we can learn to talk about it like a town we once lived in. We know the streets, we learn the shortcuts, we remember the bad intersections. We don't have to move back to map it. That image unknotted something in me. The past as a place, not a trap. A place you can reference without relocating your whole life. Okay, I said. Then when I bring it up, I'm going to try to bring it like weather, not like proof. He smiled, and I'll try to hear it like weather. Jacket on, umbrella up, not building a bunker. Later, I texted Maya. We're practicing meteorology again. She replied with a cloud emoji and a sun. Eliza sent a photo of sprouting seed trays, green whispers under soil, a promise we could point to when hope felt abstract. That weekend, we took down the paper star, swept pine needles from the floor, and boxed the ornaments with labels that said nothing grand. Just lights, hooks, tiny bear. We put the box in the closet without recording it anywhere else. The action felt ordinary and quietly radical at once. Our life didn't need an index to exist. Before bed, he asked if I wanted to read aloud or fall asleep to the heater's soft hiss. Read, I said, and chose a brief essay about ordinary rituals saving hard days. Halfway through, his hand found mine under the blanket. Not squeezing, not asking, just there. When I finished, we didn't discuss it. We turned off the lamp and let the dark be kind. I didn't dream of ticking. I dreamed of quiet snow. February dragged its feet, a long hallway of gray afternoons. We slid into a yellow that lingered. Late replies, low patience, a sense that our timing was half a beat off. Nothing catastrophic, just grit in the gears. On Friday, we abandoned plans and stayed home with takeout and separate books. The silence wasn't brittle, it was thin, like a blanket that barely covered your toes. Halfway through a chapter I wasn't really absorbing, he set his book down. We're okay, right? The question wasn't fishing, it was a hand on the table, palm up. Yeah, I said, we're just tired. We let that be the diagnosis. No heroic fix. We did the small repairs within reach, washed the sheets, opened the window for a slap of cold air, took a slow lap around the block, shared an orange over the sink. None of it would make a montage. All of it helped. On Sunday, we ran errands. At the grocery store, a woman argued with the self-checkout machine and then laughed at herself. In the parking lot, a kid insisted the moon was following her, and I envied the confidence. Normal life kept offering proof that rhythm returns. That night, we named our weather, yellow trending green. Not because anything profound had changed, but because ordinary kindness had had time to accumulate. He stacked the clean plates without aligning them like soldiers. I left a note on his mug that just said, "Hi." Before sleep, he murmured, "Thank you for not auditing me." I said, "Thank you for not managing me." We smiled in the dark. Two people learning how to be soft without being vague, precise without being sharp. The heater clicked once, then settled. We did too. Monday wore the same gray coat. We went to work anyway, texted at lunch about nothing. Bad coffee, a coworker's haircut, a dog in a sweater. The nothingness mattered. It meant the tissue held. On the bus home, I wrote one line. Tired isn't doom. Later, I read it aloud. He nodded and taped it to fridge crooked, a small rebellion against straight lines. A year since the storage unit. The phrase sounds like a chapter title, but the day itself arrived quiet. No confetti, no omen. We didn't commemorate it with a grand gesture. We made pancakes. We argued briefly about whether blueberries belong inside the batter or on top. Inside, obviously. Then compromised and did both. Ordinary felt like the achievement. If you ask me now whether it was all a lie, I'd say no. It was part lie, part love, part fear, part hope. 4 rivers that met and muddied the water until we learned to read the current. We didn't purify it. We learned to swim it without swallowing so much. The ledger didn't vanish, it became irrelevant. The urge to measure didn't die, it learned to rest. We still have weather: green, yellow, red, sometimes all before lunch. We check the sky and pack the right jackets. We fail and say so. We apologize without bullet points. We celebrate without proof. We let tomatoes be tomatoes. We sing badly when carols demand it and hum on ordinary Tuesdays because joy isn't seasonal. People think growth looks like a rocket. Ours looks like a path tamped by walking. If there's a moral, it's this: no spreadsheet can prevent heartbreak, and no archive can replace attention. Love is manual, always. It is built by hands that wash dishes, that hold during storms, that learn when to let go and trust the person beside them to stand. At night, I slide my notebook from the shelf and list 3 small truths. I laughed at a dumb joke. The plant by the window survived another week. I wanted quiet and asked for it. He reads in bed beside me, not curating, just existing. The heater clicks and settles. We do too. The metronome has been replaced by breath, imperfect and human, sinking and unsinking as it wants. We turn off the lamp, we sleep, we wake. We try again. Before sleep, I whisper a gentler title into the dark. It was complicated, and it was ours. Outside, a late bus exhales. Tomorrow will be weather. We'll meet it together. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight, my Reddit story lovers. Thanks for staying with me right to the end. I hope this one brought you a smile or two before you drift off. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Bedtime Blocks, and let me know in the comments what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Until then, sleep well, dream easy, and I'll see you in the next one.